Okay, so before I begin, I just want to preface by challenging you to apply what I'm about to talk about to a sport that resonates with you most. And I also ask for you to keep an open heart and an open mind, as the things I'm talking about should be taken very seriously. So, in recent years, society has recognized flaws regarding the safety of gymnastics. We must recognize the past and correct persistent abuse in gymnastics in order to create an environment that yields true athletic flourishment. Gymnasts are only able to do what they do by the guidance of authority. We have coaches who teach skills, spot gymnasts, guide them along their journey. We have parents who provide a means of financial support, paying for them to compete, to practice, to wear shiny leotards. And we also have medical professionals who help gymnasts maintain and recover from injuries. So these three types of authority all have one commonality, and that is the opportunity to be either to have a healthy athletic relationship with an athlete or an unhealthy athletic relationship. So, you may recognize this verse, 1 Corinthians 13, as the verse commonly read at weddings. Love is patient, love is kind. But I believe that this verse lays the foundation of what any true athletic relationship should bear, that being love. Authority should be patient and kind. They should seek what's best for the gymnast and not what's best for themselves. An athlete should always be regarded for who they are as a person and not just the skills they execute. Where appropriate love is present, abuse is absent. To define abuse in gymnastics, one must understand what it once was. So today I'm going to be focusing on women's artistic gymnastics because that's what I did, and it is the most common type of gymnastics today. So we have USA Gymnastics, or USAG, which is the major governing body of gymnastics in America. It wasn't that popular until coaches Bella and Marta Caroli started their legacy here. But before that, they were married in Romania and had great success with a gymnast named Nadia Comaneci, who scored the first ever perfect 10 in Olympic history. And then after that, they decided to move to America and kind of build up their legacy here, live that American dream. They did that by forming the Caroli Ranch, which later became the U.S. Olympic National Training Site. And this was basically a facility located deep into a forest in Huntsville, Texas. And girls would come here about once a month in order to train and try to make the Olympic team. And when they came here, they had to come without their parents. They were required to stay in underkept cabins and follow strict meal plans. And even if they tried to call their parents at home, it was very hard to get a cell signal. So very secluded. And this was just the perfect opportunity for abuse to flourish, specifically by Bella and Marta. Besides practicing on severe injuries, the girls were also malnourished. The Carolis wanted their gymnasts to have a slim, effortless look. So because of that, they had the strict meal plans and were oftentimes fat shamed by their coaches. So here I have a video. Try your hardest to listen to what Marta says after this gymnast is done with her routine. So she just finished her routine. You would expect your coach to be loving and congratulating and giving you positive feedback. But here, the first thing she makes a comment about is how her weight was why she succeeded and that she shouldn't gain that weight back. So that's just a lot for a girl to handle emotionally and just altogether not good. But that brings me to Larry Nassar. So besides the abuse that girls were facing from Bella and Marta Caroli, Larry Nassar used his position as head team doctor to sexually abuse and exploit hundreds of girls under the guise of medical care. His sexual misconduct consisted of exams without another adult present, the misuse of pelvic procedures, and child pornography. This was only made possible by the use of sexual grooming, which is when a sexual predator builds a relationship with a child to abuse and exploit them. Nassar was seen as a smiling face and a breath of fresh air at the Caroli Ranch. When girls were facing the verbal and emotional abuse in the gym, Nassar was known to comfort them and help them manage all that they were going through. He would sneak them food, he would leave candy underneath their pillows, try to do anything to make these girls like him. And a lot of them did, until they started to notice the malpractice and weird things that he would do to him. But a lot of the girls would talk amongst themselves, but no one really wanted to hurt their chances of making the Olympic team. So they kind of pushed it to the side because the pressure of making the Olympics was too strong. And so this abuse went on for many, many years. And it wasn't until gymnast Maggie Nichols told a teammate, eventually told her coach, and was able to file a complaint against Nasser. But this is messed up. That complaint went directly to Steve Penny, the president of USA Gymnastics, and he was able to hide that complaint from both the FBI and other authorities for many, many years, and was able to keep her from making the Olympic team and not having that public sort of attention. So her gymnastics was hurt because she was able to speak out about it. But eventually, by the work of the Indianapolis Star, Larry Nasser was sentenced to over 175 years in prison on both child pornography and sexual assault charges. Part of his trial was having people and victims speak directly to him. So here we have Simone Biles, Michaela Maroney, Allie Raisman, there's Maggie Nichols again. It was just a very sad day listening to all these testimonies, but also a very powerful moment. Parents were also allowed to speak at this trial. Here you can see one dad trying to attack Nasser. You can see him hiding behind there. I think that picture is kind of cool, kind of funny. So that leads me to the question, what is abuse? By understanding the past, we begin to learn what is acceptable in the present. Abuse in gymnastics is abundant, whether we recognize it or not. Most of the time, we let it pass off as a method of strict coaching, as it can fall under that category. But how much is too much? I'm unable to give you a black and white definition of what abuse is and is not, but I can remind you that abusiveness stems from selfish ambition and the absence of love. There are 3 types of abuse. You have sexual, physical, and emotional. Sexual abuse can include assaultive behaviors, inappropriate touch, relations, and one-on-one situations. Physical abuse can include denying access to food or water, excessive stretching and spotting techniques, and also overtraining. And lastly, emotional abuse can include undermining an athlete's sense of worth, public humiliation, and encouragement to ostracize other teammates. Where does abuse take place? So as I already mentioned, definitely elite gymnastics, but other than that, we have the college and the club level. College gymnastics is supposed to be an organization that is fun. You have your school environments, your student sections. But right now, that's where most of the allegations are coming from. Mostly fat shaming because coaches just have that power over these girls. I hate to say it, but new Clemson gymnastics coach Amy Smith already has several allegations from other colleges that she used to work at regarding how she would fat shame girls, pin them against one another, and basically make fun of their weight, which is just terrible. So that goes to show just how common this is. And then we also have your club level, which I would say that abuse in gymnastics is prominent because high school gymnastics is not the biggest thing, and so you don't have your school boards and your athletic associations checking up on all these different clubs like they would at a high school. So definitely grounds for abuse. What are its effects? Its effects include psychological damage and physical deterioration. Part of psychological damage includes PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from having a faulty childhood. And then eating disorders and disordered eating are very common. So the 2 most common types are orthorexia, which is an obsession with healthy eating and fitness, and then also body dysmorphia, which is when someone can't stop thinking about one or more perceived flaws in their appearance, whether they're actually visible or not. So those can affect a gymnast during their training and also after their training. It can take many years to recover from both of those. Then we have physical deterioration. Besides the inevitable pain from overstretching and constant impact, menstruation can be impaired. After persistent emotional stress, gymnasts can tend to lose their periods. This happens because the body knows it cannot support a fetus and it will block the onset of puberty. Without estrogen, the body is without estrogen, bones weaken and you begin to risk fractures, premature osteoporosis, and even scoliosis. And this goes to show just how far the measures of abuse can reach. How is abuse regulated? So you may be familiar with the organization Safe Sport, as it covers many other sports, but gymnastics has recently recognized this as its main governing body to partner with them and handle this abuse. So they do that by enforcing mandatory courses for coaches and athletes who are over the age of 18. And this normally takes a few hours. You complete a test, you get certified. But besides that, it's not really checked up on, especially in all the different clubs. Here I have a poster of, I took this actually at my state meet a few weeks ago, just a poster hanging in the bathroom saying, like, make sure that no one-on-one contact with a minor. And I just think, yeah, having a poster up is one thing, but actually, like, monitoring the scene is a totally different thing. So it is a step in the right direction, but there can definitely be so much more done in order to prevent abuse. And lastly, me. Last September, I had the opportunity to sit down and speak with Maggie Nichols, athlete A, about her experience in overcoming the effects of abuse from both the Karolis and Nasser. She told me that the hardest part of all was being able to look in the mirror and understand she was enough after being told otherwise. I think her relationship with the Lord is why she understands her value today, and frankly, I would have to agree. After doing gymnastics for 17 years, it's hard not to let it become your everything. Now that it's over, I can look back on the things that have truly affected me. For the worst, it was medals that allowed my perception of personal success. It was a coach who told me at 10 years old my ribs were huge. It was being verbally harassed and threatened by men disguised as college recruiters. It is now feeding a body that no longer has gymnastics to fall on. For the better, it is my gratitude for my body's physical capabilities. It is my appreciation for the authority that loved me. It is my fearlessness and work ethic. It is my love for this sport. Never would I have thought that something as small as rolling an ankle would hold me back from finishing what I love so much, but clearly that happened. And now my perspective has flipped, as I am no longer the gymnast, but I'm the coach. I hold the pressure of being one of the first coaches my girls have had. I'm their introduction to the sport I love so much. My prayer is that I could be what so many girls have never had, a loving coach. One who cares for who they are, not just the skills they have. By understanding our full worth in Christ and displaying love in every aspect, we may begin to fill the gaps that abuse has made. Thank you.
One open up to our guests. Do you have any questions or feedback for Caroline?
You mentioned there at the very first of all, well done.
Thank you.
Excellent all the way across. Like I really, a few things that I genuinely appreciated. How you spoke about it great. The quote where you said, "Where appropriate love is present, abuse is absent." That's such a good principle across every level. Can you speak to a little bit more? At the very end, you were talking about value, like as you were processing it at the very end, like the value being fundamental as an athlete, like where your value is from. Can you process that a little bit more?
Yeah, so one of the things I definitely want to hit on is that success is not measured by medals, and it took me a long time to realize that. And as you can see, like, that's where abuse stems from, is coaches wanting their gymnasts only to win and get gold medals, which clearly isn't, like, there's not enough gold medals to give to everyone. So that's just not a good principle to live by. You can't always strive for perfection. So just understanding that there's so much more than just how you perform, but actually you're spending so many hours in a week. So what goes into that, everything around there is definitely plays a big impact.
So, as a father of a daughter who has an interest in gymnastics, I'm not sure if this is a fleeting 6-year-old thing. What advice could you give to me as a father of an athlete on some questions as far as just as an athletic parent, what do you?
That's a great question. I feel very strongly about this because people ask me, like, oh, do you want your kid to be in gymnastics? Look at what all you've been through. And ultimately, like, it's up to them to choose their sport. But I think gymnastics is a great sport for increasing your cognitiveness and your balance and all your fine motor skills. But being a parent just really, you're the one who's driving them to practice. You have the ability to talk to them before and after. So just always being that person they can lean on and fall on, especially as they get into those more competitive sports where it's like hours and hours and hours every night. But I was talking to my parents about this last night. Just being able to stay like open with them, and also as a parent, being able to make sure they're in a safe environment, it's super important. I remember when I reached the level where my head coach was a male, my parents had a conversation with him and made sure that there was never going to be any situations where it was just the two of us or it was just a group of girls and him. And also traveling to competition, just make sure that once again they're never alone and in any circumstances where potential abuse can thrive, just making sure they're in a safe environment is very important.
How prevalent is high school gymnastics, like school teams?
Up north, it's more of a thing, but in the south, like it's just not a thing. It is very expensive gymnastics equipment. You have 4 events, and a lot of the time, high school gymnastics will just be like you tumble on a wrestling mat, but it's not really. I wouldn't say it's all of what normal gymnastics is.
I had a couple things. First of all, again, well done.
Thank you.
Really well organized. Visuals were on point. I want to get all the like formality stuff out of the way first. Very articulate. I could tell this comes from a very well thought out personal place, and that's really key to any good presentation. If you don't believe it, we're not going to. And it seems like you're coming from a very like you. It's not just that you feel strongly about it; you've also thought a lot about it, and that's a very dynamic combination. So that aside, I love that you talk about success. And I love that. Like I would connect that with what you said at the very beginning. What you're saying about gymnastics could really be projected across the board. Like this is kind of a unique. There's a lot of unique things about gymnastics that seems to be some elements that mix in a way that maybe it doesn't in other sports. But especially the thing about success is that when you're being told your value as a person is in this athletic competition, and it is a competition, you don't want to take away from the competition because then you lose the edge of coming from the participation trophy generation. Like you lose the edge of what competition is all about. So yeah, like connecting those. This is me just trying to like reinforce something. Connect those two dots with any sport that you're in, or grades for that matter. So much of your school experience as seniors so far has been evaluating you, whether it's sports or grades or whatever. And if you're not careful, you'll believe this lie that you are whatever you've been evaluated by. That's just the worst thing ever. You are more than all of that. Anyways, take a Bible teacher hat off real quick. The parent thing is really interesting. That because you said so much of this stuff, like the couple, their camp or whatever, parents weren't supposed to go. They weren't supposed to contact parents. And then also you said where most of the allegations happen are college, where students are removed from their parents. Could you talk a little bit about, and you already answered Coach really well about like from the parents' perspective. I really liked the key there was like driving them to and from practice, like just being hyper aware of their attitude, their mood going in, their mood coming out. All that's really important. From more of an organizational standpoint, though, what does it look? It seems like there's a correlation between parents being less involved and an increase in abuse. So first question is that accurate? Is there a correlation, do you think?
I mean,
And second of all, like how, well, yeah, but then the second question is then what does the corrective look like? Like what does, yes, as a parent, like how do you do that? But more like in terms of the organizations, you as a coach, the organizations that you work for as a coach, different gyms, like what should policy look like to keep parents involved so that abuse doesn't thrive?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely common for parents to just drop their kids off. A lot of them don't want to sit through 3 and 4 hour practices, so it can kind of like need the childcare, very expensive childcare. But I think it's important for at least parents to get to know those coaches on a personal level because you're the one surrendering your kids to them for so many hours in a week. So it's definitely important that they at least know who they are. My gym does this really well. We call them IGB meetings, kind of like the school meetings you would have, and we call them it's basically like your gymnastics plan meetings. And I think those are really well because a lot of the time parents take it into their own hands to say like, oh, I want my daughter competing this level and I want her to get these skills. But when the coaches and the parents can communicate and understand this is what your daughter needs to do in order to get these skills, this is where we expect her to be competing next year. I just think when that communication is there, then it's more regulated, and then also you see what those coaches do. So if you see any issues, you can talk to them about it.
Last question, and I think it'll be quick. Safe sport. It's like, oh, okay, well, there's a solution, and you're just like, yeah, but so you mentioned that it's ineffective. Then you made the statement there are things that could be done. So run a scenario real quick. You are now the CEO of Safe Sport. What's the first move? Like, what do you do to make this? Like, you say coaches get certified and whatnot, but like, what should that organization be doing to prevent all these problems?
Yeah, I talked about this in my paper. How we have the FDA, which goes to restaurants and gives them like a rating for their food, and then you also have like people from the state board come to hair salons and make sure that they're doing everything as they're supposed to. So I think that as Safe Sport, they should be going to these individual gyms, spending a week there, maybe even going like incognito and just reporting what they see. And even just from a like structural standpoint, gyms are sketchy places. My gym has a 12-foot hole in the middle of the ground, a big trench, and just making sure that everything's safe and proceeding well.
So there's no type of like when someone gets, is it the coaches that get certified or the gyms that get certified?
It's the coaches individually. So maybe the gyms as a whole. Yeah.
So like there's no type of like auditing or like for instance we just went through accreditation to show that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as a school. There's nothing like
There's
that.
nothing like that. Yeah.
They do that in movie theaters.
Yeah, and to your point, like you're right. Like I'm glad you pointed out like in your paper we do this stuff for everything else.
Yeah.
It seems like we should be for this. Yes, y'all have anything else for Caroline before I open it up to everybody?
Thank you.
Classmates, y'all got anything for Caroline?
Cool.
So, when you're talking about the grooming, do you think that these, especially male coaches, have the intent of grooming the young girls going into the profession, or do you think it's more of them realizing throughout the process that they do have influence and the power over them?
I think it can be a little bit of both. Obviously, if your heart's not in the right place, you would go into this profession because you know that you're going to have unfiltered access to girls and their bodies. But at the same time, once people realize that they have that authority and position, then maybe their heart can change. I think that's situational. Good question.
You said that folks get PTSD from having a faulty childhood. Is that like a term in the literature?
No.
It should be. I was like, wow, all right.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Like that's a great way to put it. Of like,
I mean,
we're robbed of a real childhood.
Especially me now this year having not being able to practice because of my ankle, I feel like I'm getting to spend more time with my friends every night and just getting to do all these fun things and kind of live out the childhood that I never had because I was so used to practicing Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday, every night. So
I didn't mean you specifically, but
like faulty childhood, that's definitely.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of questions. You give me a lot to just think about, and even as a coach, like not of guy come in at the beginning of this year in August. His name was Donovan Graham, and he's my rabbi and my mentor. And he was talking about like culture of schools, but also culture of athletic programs. Like, you said love and pointed to 1 Corinthians 13, and his was like grace, of like, it's got to be about grace. And he's like, well, what is that? That's like people, athletes, students, whatever, knowing that I'm for you. You might have made a mistake, you might have done something wrong, but I'm still for you. And he points this out, and I can like feel, because I'm sitting with a bunch of other like coaches and athletics people. Sorry, Coach Theo, and like I can feel this kind of like participation trophy generation. Oh, we just make everybody feel like they're so great. Like, and me, I'm sitting there and I'm like convicted of it. Of like, when he strikes out, does he look over and see me being like disappointed, angry, upset? Does he feel like I'm for him? And I like, so I was convicted of that, of like feeling that as a coach. Now you are experiencing this of like, and y'all will all feel this of like the things that you used to do, you are now responsible for like showing other people how to do. And there's this really weird, interesting dynamic there. Alas, like, this isn't so much like a question. Early in my career here, at one point, it was actually my first year here, and I had a student. This was back when I had one of these offices for a planning period, and a female student, came by to talk to me, and Price Garcia was my aide, and she made Price leave because wanted to talk about something or whatever, and wanted to like close the door to one of these offices. And I was like, no, thank you. Let's keep that door open. She's like, what? Why? And I was just like, because I'm a male faculty member and you're a female student, and we don't need to have the door closed. And she was like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it doesn't matter. And I was like, all right, part of what you need to understand is, like, you need to practice putting yourself in safe situations and not like, okay, sure, you might be with a trustworthy authority figure, not even necessarily not even just like an authority figure, but understand this is also partly like practice for you of not putting yourself in a situation where something like this could happen. Not that the onus is on you, like this isn't like a victim blaming thing, but just like, y'all going to college next year? It happens, brother. People get into these professions with mixed motives, and it happens. Great job, Carolyn.
Thank you.
That made me think of, sorry for continuing, but so in my time teaching, I've seen sports be the best thing that could ever happen to a student, but also quitting sports, I've seen many times, has been the best thing for a student. It happens, right? And you, like, it seems like you're kind of like on the fence with it. I'm not saying like you need to pick a side or anything like that. Here's my question that I think would be valuable. Again, back to the first thing you said, projecting on any sport or really any extracurricular that you're involved in, because any good thing we make an ultimate thing becomes an idol, right? So your advice, I'm gonna shut up because here's a question. What advice would you give to a student to say, hey, if here's a red flag that you should be looking out for, that maybe it's time for you to quit?
That's a good question. Personally, there have been many times where I've wanted to quit gymnastics, but it's always been like, oh, deep down inside, I love the sport. So really just looking about what do you love about the sport that you're doing that's keeping you from driving, like that's making you drive to these practices and compete on the weekends and everything in between. I mean, I've had friends, like they're put in such bad environments from their coaches and their teammates where if that's hurting your mental health in a way where you're not getting that love and you're not getting that satisfaction from being in the sport, you probably don't need to be in the sport. But there is a line of how much you can take, how much is too much. So, yeah, just seeing how much you really. I mean, for me, I would always look back on like old videos whenever I wanted to quit, and that was kind of what kept me going. Like I used to be so innocent and love it so much. But if there comes a point when those videos don't mean anything, you probably shouldn't be in the sport.
Based on everything I've heard, based on the paper that you wrote, I think there's a really strong element that when your thoughts of yourself become that negative and become that toxic, it's time to hang it up. And I know all those words get overused, and all of them can mean all sorts of terrible. When you look in the mirror and you see something less than what you should be seeing, it's time to quit. And I don't mean it's just about sports. I mean about jobs. This is why to me it's such a valuable presentation that you got here. Anything that you're pursuing in life has the potential to reduce you to something less than what God made you to be. And if you let it, it'll happen. So don't let it. Like actively be watching. God is this. Actively be praying. God is this. Is this reducing me to less than what you've made me and saved me to be? Because in some ways sports can grow you as a person into the person that God. So it's just a matter of you attending to yourself and examining yourself and seeing, like, is this edifying me? The word, like, literally building me up into the person that God wants me to be, or is this reducing me down to something where I'm starting to fall for this lie that I'm less than what God wants me to be? And that's what another thing, Carol. Sorry, that she wrote a really good paper. You should read it sometime. One of the things you spent a little more time on was this. What's her name? The gymnast that you talked to.
Maggie Nichols.
So her relationship with Jesus is a really strong. What's the word I'm looking for? It inoculated her to a lot of this stuff. That I don't care what my coach says. I know who I am in Jesus. I don't care what my boss says. I know who I am in Jesus. I don't care what this, that, or the other. I don't know if anybody saw it. Dude in the Masters he had a green jacket on, so I'm just guessing he won. I think that's a thing. But he gets in the microphone and he's like, yeah, I wanted to win so bad, but my friends the Sunday before reminded me that no matter how I end up performing, my victory was on the cross. Boy, I tell you what. Anyway, so students, y'all got anything else for Caroline? Steven, you had your hand up earlier.
Do you think that some of the issues, like with abuse in gymnastics, also parallel stuff like abuse in cheerleading, like
Yeah.
rockstar cheer especially?
I actually read a book about it was about gymnastics and figure skating, so it definitely does parallel to a lot of different sports. I know Hope knows there's a ton of scandal going around Rockstar Cheer, which was a big cheerleading site in Greenville, and a coach was sexually abusing his girls and eventually went on to kill himself because of it. So yeah, I would say those sports that you don't really have that school influence, it's definitely easier for abuse to slip through the cracks, go unchecked.
So if I can interject real quick, I'm just going to throw this out there. Feel free to say whatever you want to say. Should men be anywhere near
That's a good question.
Should men be coaching in a predominantly female? And I want to be careful here.
That's a good question. I don't really want to answer that question.
Like I've coached girls teams before. Like I know we've got a lot of male coaches coaching girls teams. Like I know it can be a very fun, great experience. I'm just like, I'd be more than happy to hang up my hat and just be like, yeah, let's just not have. Okay.
My parents asked me that question last night, and I said, I feel very strongly. Gymnastics, you rely a lot on spotting, and I'm not saying, yeah, guys have more muscles, but normally they're bigger in stature, and personally, me and a lot of my teammates feel more confident when we have a guy spotting us. I'm fortunate to have an amazing coach. You can see him back over here, Sean. He's the big guy. He saved my life a million times, and I do think that they should, as long as their intentions are right, which his definitely are, I think that it is beneficial to have male coaches.
Okay. Well said.
For the spotting aspect and other things.
This dude right here.
That is my physical therapist, Chad. He's definitely, I want to put him in there because of authority, medical professional. Chad's been my PT for 7 years, and he's been the only reason why I've been able to make it through everything. It means a lot. Yep.
I saw another hand.
You emotional about Chad.
Cut it out.
If you know me, you know I love Chad.
Did I see another hand?
That was mine, and then you asked me a question.
You can still ask ask it if you want.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
You did it for me. That was good.
See, men
That was
just
a
need
great
to
question.
like shut up and quit doing stuff. Y'all got anything else?
Enough.
All right, Caroline, thank you so much.
Thank you,
One round
guys.
of applause.